All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
Well, we got a couple topics. I was philosophizing in my gym and just watching TV recently. So we got two topics from that. One on the connection, the brain and the body, and how they kind of work the same as far as they develop. And that's probably the more interesting one because it's what I know most about. And then the other one, I watched the Untold story with Johnny Manziel, and I had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah.
But you had some less deep thoughts when I was reflecting on you, what I was thinking about. So,
Yeah. So, um, this actually, I have a couple of tie-ins to that I was thinking about before we get into these topics. Um, so first, it's too bad we're not talking about the buzz of the day, which is I happened to open up X last night, which I rarely do, and everything was about the Georgia indictment.
hmm.
And it just made me groan and roll my eyes. And I realized if we were smarter YouTubers, we would be talking about that because that's the clickbait. But we don't care. I mean, how many times can you talk about the same thing? It's basically what we've already talked about, which
Mhm.
is this is nonsense. This is the weaponization of the judicial system. But nobody on either side really wants to have a real conversation about it because you can't admit that Trump brought a lot of this on himself because he's a bombastic a-hole.
Well, I can tell you the silver lining part of it that not a whole lot of people are talking about. And I think I may be wrong. I could be completely off, but my analysis of a spin-off situation of that is, it's like the show that, the show was kind of good, but there's one character that everybody loves, so they do a spin-off, and that's Vivek.
Mm.
And he's running his campaign right now, in my eyes, to not only set himself up that if he doesn't get the nomination, of course, obviously he wants to win. I believe
Mm.
him when he says that, but I don't believe him when he says I can't be a second man. I think he doesn't want to be a second man,
Yeah.
but I think he's running his campaign to be the second man, or, and this is the part nobody's talking about, to pull every Trump voter once Trump is out. Because his latest speech, okay, so one of the things he's done is he's paid for out of his own pocket all the FOIA requests that are going after the deep state for going after Trump. So he's
Mm.
paying for that himself as a political opponent. He's not indicting his political opponent. He's trying to help his political opponent. So there's that one, which a lot of people don't know about. But then he came out and on the stump brought up the fact that he didn't want to win that way. He wants to win the fair way. So he's supporting him and doing all these things. But then he said, and I sent out a petition to every other candidate that the day we take office, if Trump is convicted, we're going to pardon him.
Smart
And
move.
he signed it right in front of everybody. So I think not only is he trying to be in Trump's good graces going into a possible Trump win, but on the flip side of it, Trump voters aren't going to just go to DeSantis. Some will,
Mm-hmm.
but the hardcore Trump voters won't. But they might say, you know what? This Vivek guy promised to pardon Trump. And they might not.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that would have just stayed home if Trump's out of it.
All of that makes me angry, and so it's too bad we're not going to dive into that because I'm in the perfect mood to talk about crap like that. Because while I was out setting up the drip lines in the garden, uh, something was crawling up my shorts. And when something's crawling up your shorts and you're a guy, I don't care what it is, you're going to smack it. It could have been a copperhead, and I don't care how many times it bites me. I'm going to slap it until it gets out of my shorts before it gets somewhere delicate. So now
Yeah,
I've got this
you
big
you
honking
don't want
welt.
rotting flesh in that
Yeah.
one spot that's never going to recover.
So now I got this big honking welt on my hamstring from a wasp that was crawling up my shorts while I was trying to get the hoses set up.
Well, I had a scorpion in my nether regions when I put
Oh
on a
no.
pair of shorts when I was younger, and that didn't feel good for a while. But they say a bee sting will permanently enlarge it. Maybe a scorpion sting will do that too. I don't know.
It's only one way to find out
Only one way
for
to find
science.
out for
So
science.
the
Yes.
the the other anecdote I had of, you know, this is quasi more serious, but there's a reason we don't chase the clickbait because it's not actually a real solution. So you were having deep thoughts the other day and you texted me, and my response was, my thoughts weren't that deep. My thoughts were giggity, because as we were driving along, we were passing this group of, they were obviously medical offices from a lot of the signs around. And one sign in particular over one of these offices made me start laughing, and then my wife called me a bad person for saying because the sign was a big blue neon letter simply said pelvic therapy, and it made me think we should start advertising pelvic therapy now available for those who qualify. All right.
Oh,
But
I'm
on a more
assuming it's pelvic floor stuff or either pelvic tilt. I don't know. That could be
pelvic
a
tilt,
lot of things.
you know, there's a lot that can go into immobility
I mean,
in the
there's a lot that can
pelvic
go into
area.
somebody's pelvis too, you know.
All right. So you're distracting me again. That's, but when I thought about it a little more seriously, it was annoying because um my guess on what that is my hips are tight. I have aching in and around my hips. Yeah, because you probably sit too long and you don't exercise enough and you don't do enough of the right kind of exercise. So let's just come in and deal with that area of discomfort rather than addressing why it's there in the first place. But come on in because it's clickbaity, it works, it's something buzzworthy.
Well, we don't know if they don't do that. If I was to use a clickbait term like that, I would still okay. So here's the evaluation. So this would be my process. Say I wanted to specialize in the pelvis. I could never be a specialist, but say I did. Then I'd say, okay, back pain, knee pain, pelvic therapy. And I would come in and I would do an analysis. I would have some sort of evaluation tool that was specific around the pelvis. And then if I was a chiropractor, I would adjust that area. But then I would have a therapy section that taught you how to move properly to keep it from happening again. And so that would be a very inclusive program, even though you're still kind of looking at a bubble. If you want to expand to that, your assessment is a total body assessment. And then you say, okay, and this is where your pelvis is throwing you off. And then you go through that same two-step process after that. So it could be a good program.
I'm way too negative. So the first thing it made me think of was all the uh, uh, buzzwords and fads, the IV vitamin therapies and the newborn chiropractic. Your newborn does not need a chiropractor.
With the exception of an injury coming out of the canal, but
Yes,
never say never.
never say never. But in
Did
that
you hear
case,
about that baby in Georgia? On a related
what?
note, the doctor, in trying to help the baby out the canal, this doctor had to be pulling hard, decapitated the baby by pulling too hard.
Oh my gosh.
And then they did a C-section on the body, got the head out, and didn't tell the parents. They just kind of like put it together and swathed it and said it died in vitro.
That's the most horrific thing I've ever heard.
How hard do you have to pull to dismember something, even a baby? I mean,
I know.
like a baby's neck, maybe it's the strength of my pinky finger. How hard would I have to pull on this to dismember it completely, like off, not
I
break
mean,
it, but like completely off?
when they do partial birth abortions, they snip the neck with a pair of scissors first and
Well,
then start dismembering it because it
that's to
shouldn't
kill it.
happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that should not. Oh geez, way to bring us down. I'm gonna have
Well,
another
they
drink now.
they they used to use kind of like a vacuum tool when babies were stuck, and they stopped doing that because it was in some cases was separating the vertebra and paralyzing the child. But that's different than actually removing it from the body. I mean, we all watch movies where they cut off somebody's head in the thing, and it's like it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to hack for a while unless you've got a perfect setup like they used to have in the executioner days. But
Oh yeah, if you wanna if you're into dark and disturbing things, you can look at uh what the Japanese did to Chinese civilians and prisoners of war during World War II. And one of the things was they would practice because of stories. They would get their, you know, mass produced katanas, which weren't as awesome as the real thing, and say, I want to see if I can cleave this guy in two, like in the stories, and it wouldn't work. And it would be like Bone Tomahawk.
Mm-hmm.
There's another movie you can go watch if you want to indulge the disturbing.
Just get a bone-in ham and get your thickest kitchen knife and try to take that thing off and try to cut it in half. You're probably not going to be able to do it in one swipe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The human body is horrifically resilient sometimes.
Yeah. But yeah, that's sorry to bring us down there. Back to chiropractors. Yes, there could be a case where a baby would need a chiropractor. That's probably beyond the case that a baby would need a chiropractor,
Mm-hmm.
but say they got it was a tough traveling, it was a tough travels through the canal, and their vertebrae they developed some sort of scoliosis from that, from being squished in there. That I can see, because you can have scoliosis at birth, and I can see that being a corrective process.
But
Which,
for the most part, yes, the body is already squished. That's just the natural part of squeezing through the birth canal. And that's why newborns look kind of funny. And it takes a little while before they start looking like a baby.
mm-hmm. So I can see a time and place for that, but it would be so highly specialized. I would say that would be like a dozen in the country kind of profession.
Mm-hmm. And if you've ever if you've ever been to any sort of medical block or office and you see all of these, you know, posters and advertisements and things that undoubtedly someone selling something brought into that office and say, let us put up this display and it will increase your business for business that isn't really needed. But I mean, it's clickbait. Clickbait has been around forever and it takes many forms.
Well, when I was looking for a new cardiologist, when I moved to this area, one of the ones I went to first had a poster up for the HCG diet, if anybody remembers that, where you
I
were
don't
on a
remember that one.
500 calorie a day diet and they injected you with HCG, which is a precursor to the hormones. HCG has a use if you're trying to get some like a very specific use that I've seen is if you're getting somebody off TRT, like you're cycling them off to try to get their body back in order, you can use HCG to do that. But that's a very specific thing. What it turns out from the literature is it does nothing for you when it comes to weight loss. It's the 500 calorie a day diet that does it. The HCG was a placebo that kept you on the diet and gave you like a focal point. So realistically, it was a gimmick. But I walked into this doctor's office and he had an advertisement for it, real big on his wall, and I got a new doctor. I said, you know nothing about actual health
Or else didn't care enough
to
to
vet the
or
vendor.
or was or did know better but figured, hey, it's your money, which again, get a new doctor.
Mm-hmm. But that's part of the problem, and this actually might segue us into my fitness talk, because everybody in medicine now, for the most part, is a specialist of some kind. And not only are they a specialist of some kind, but they're super highly specialized as a specialist, and they can't see outside of that bubble. So you said pelvic therapy. If this person had back pain, say, and they went to this pelvic therapy, the pelvis may just be one part of the problem. And you need to look at the whole body to assess what this person really needs. And you might get some short-term pain alleviation from a pelvic adjustment, but then after that, the holistic approach doesn't address it. So eventually you get a compensation pattern down the road, and either that back problem becomes a knee problem, or that back problem becomes a shoulder problem, or the back problem stays a back problem, but now you have a knee and a shoulder problem too. So it's this is why you
Welcome to
need to
my
look at, yeah,
world.
you need to look at the whole body. And I am a very much a generalist. If you gave me some, oh man, I can't even think of a specific thing that I couldn't handle, but that that's not an arrogant statement. That's just because I've worked with so many things. There are things out there that somebody would say, this pitcher is having trouble getting his hip over his acetabulum, or blah, 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 something along those lines. And I'd be like, well, okay, we'll go to,
Well, we can use me as an example because we've
yeah.
used me as an example before, but that's why you're my go-to guy when I'm like, I need to adjust my program and I'm not quite sure how to do it because, you know, I have a few outliers from injuries. right? So my left knee is kind of gimpy and my right shoulder's kind of gimpy from athletics and from injuries. But a lot of my problems, and even those two things are exacerbated by my spinal problems. So yeah, I have pelvic problems because I sit too much because of my spinal problems. And you noticed, I hadn't even noticed before when we were doing our squat video, yeah, your thoracic's kind of straight.
Mhm.
And I hadn't even noticed that yet. I knew that my cervical was very straight, but that's going to have a follow-on effect down the chain. So if you focus too much on the one thing, you're going to miss all these other things that also need to be addressed while you're dealing with whatever the focal problem is.
Yes. And let's go back to that because now we're also getting into a new realm that's a spin-off of the original thought, because you had an original injury that started the downward spiral. So I have the thought here, and I touched on this in one of our last episodes. We've poo-pooed on Sam Harris before,
Mhm.
but he's not dumb. He's just blind with politics.
Okay.
But when he's in his realm, he's the same Sam Harris that wrote Moral Landscape, that wrote all of
Yeah, yeah.
these other books. So I was listening to an interview with him, and half of it was politics, and I kind of did the whole cringe the whole time. And then the person got him on his field of study, and he
Okay.
said something
Well,
that
let's pause it a second while we transition this because I got to take care of something.
okay. We'll be back in a second. All right, sorry for that little blip, family first. But as I was talking about, just because somebody's says something stupid politically, don't take their professional work and throw it out with the bathwater. All right. So he's a brilliant neuroscientist, and I'm going to put a board up but for those just listening, I will read it here in a second. Uh, but the we were talking about being a generalist. I'm so much of a generalist that I had to add our mental state to our physical fitness
Hmm.
in everything I do, so much so that I'm shelling out lots of money right now to go back to school for psychology to make sure I do it right. All right. So here's the statement from Sam Harris, and I got it word for word, except I added, if you're looking, the word in parentheses is the word I've added. But each moment your mind is being drawn, being dedicated to something. In each moment, you are making, and I added creating because there's different ways to say making your mind, creating your mind. You're making your being in the world based on how you pay attention. And that's true. And one of the things people need to know is think of your brain as a physical thing. So the
Hmm.
atoms in your brain actually shift based on what you pay attention to. And your brain becomes a new structure based on that. Now, it's so small that you can't, see it on a thought by thought or a day by day basis, especially since there's a skull in the way. But this is how it happens. Your body remodels to what you're paying attention to when it comes to your brain. So it's the same thing for our bodies in everyday life. And we try to fast track that with exercise, but at the same time, everything we do in our life is the same. So my statement on the bottom, which I wanted to say, just rephrase his for physical, but I decided to use an example instead. So our bodies are the same. For example, gravity. All day, every day, our bodies are subjected to the Earth's gravity. How you position yourself and move in this world stimulates growth and breakdown of your tissues. You have bad posture, the body remodels to compensate. The
Yep.
back arches, the muscles in on the front side shorten while those in the back lengthen. Chronic pain develops from chronic habits. So that's my example to the agreement there. So this is one reason I went back to school, because so many psychiatrists talk about the benefits of exercise, but they don't know shit about exercise. So many exercise professionals talk about the mental state, and your mindfulness is the buzzword, but they don't know shit about psychology other than what they've read on
Hmm.
Facebook, right? So those two things not only are the same, but there's an interplay there. Your mental state determines your physical state. You're depressed, guess what? Your body probably hurts too. Your body
Yep.
hurts, you probably will follow that up with depression.
Yep.
There's feedback loops going there. Then you get into the super positive feedback loop where you're depressed, your body hurts, you're depressed, your body hurts, you're depressed, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. One I've seen a lot of, and this is one of the things that led me down this path, is the people who the highly anxious types, the people who are always thinking about the next thing. They're in their workout, but they're thinking about the grocery store
Mm.
list they have in their head. They're never present and watch their bodies. They're flailing around everywhere because their bodies aren't in space where they want it to be either. That's the person, if I'm teaching them to do a step up and I say, nice and slow on the way down, set your foot down softly. And they step up and then they go
Bonk.
bonk. And then they wonder why their knee hurts because they're clumping down on the ground with every movement they do. And then watch them walk. They grab the ground and they're ripping it behind them to get forward faster. One lady I trained, I know she's walking in the door every time because the door starts, she's pulling on the doorknob before she's done turning it. And it makes like a whack pull. Whereas the guy that trains with her, he's almost overly soft. You hear the doorknob turn, and then there's a pause, and then it softly opens, and then he never closes the door all the way, and it's you have a totally different mental state, and they have totally different manifestations of body pain. So yeah, we have to put them all together because one begets the other, begets the other. And we could probably go through examples as we talk about this, but let's get your thought first.
So two thoughts is what you were just saying um is important because uh I think I may have relayed this before when we were recording or not, I don't remember. But when I first started working in a box gym, and one of the more astounding things to me that I would message you is I don't know how to get more regressive than what I'm doing because I thought I was the baseline. And then I would find people that were in worse shape than me, and I would go, okay, let me start you with what I started with because I thought I was in bad shape. And then as it turned out, oh no, I wasn't quite as bad as I thought I was. I was just bad relative to what I used to be able to do when I was very athletic and did a lot of sports. And so I had to learn, okay, you got to get better at evaluating people to try and figure out what their baseline is. And so as an example, yesterday, uh, I was training my lovely wife who hates working out, and it's very difficult to get her to be mindful in the way that I want, because the first step is to just get what you're talking about, which is just pay attention to what you're doing. Period. The end. So as an example, the Arnold press. All
Mhm.
right, an overhead press where you start dumbbells down here, and then you're rotating out and pushing up in a nice smooth motion. So what I want you to focus on there is that scap. I want you to feel it floating up and down as you pull it around and then pinch back and elevate up, right? The point being, because I don't want here, which is my problem, I don't want you to feel it here. I don't want you shrugging up. But you've got to have a mindfulness baseline before you can even reach that point.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is you're giving very specific instructions on what to feel with their body
Mhm.
to probably somebody who's not even in the same place in their head.
Yep.
So they're not going to be able to connect to. First of all, you got to this is where touching does come in handy. Although I don't, I'm very careful of how I touch my clients for obvious reasons. But if I'm saying I want your parascapulars doing da 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 da, I need to touch that parascapular for them to know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
You know, if I polled 20 people on the street, probably 5 of them are going to know what a rhomboid is, right? So this is where I want you focusing your attention here, and then I'll touch it. I give them a physical cue. Put my finger on that spot on the bottom edge of their shoulder blade. Then I want you to pull your shoulder back down towards where my finger is. And then I want you to do the movement. And when you get that specific, it puts them on it. But then you've got to really stay on them through the reps, because 2 reps in, it starts becoming this again. And you're like, I need you off your grocery list. I
Yep.
need you right here.
Well, Eric Cressy has talked about this, and even within the context of professional pitchers that he's trying to work with, and like YTWs, laying down on a bench and you Y, so you move your arm out in a Y, you move it out wide, so you're like a W, and then down for a Y. And he's talked about having to grab hold of someone's scapula and move it
Yeah.
manually
Cressy
because
does a
they're
lot
not.
of manuals. I love
Yeah,
manuals. It's just you got to be careful putting your hands
and
on the clients,
and
and
you're
that doesn't work well in group classes.
and
That's
you're talking about someone as a major league level pitcher who has an incredible amount of body control in their specificity, and yet not enough not enough in the direct way that he wanted, that he had to physically grab hold and move it. Of, okay, you feel this, you feel what I'm doing here, this is what you need to be able to do on your own.
you brought up pitchers, and this is the problem is these people in essence are genetic anomalies,
Mm,
and they got there based on something, but they don't necessarily have everything,
hmm.
right? We've talked about it with intelligence. How do you make up for intelligence with a job? And that's repetition. So actually, uh, I think one of the reasons more high level jobs have become more specified is because we don't have enough intelligent people to fill the roles.
Mm,
So they're so specified because then you get the repetition because you do it day in and day out, that exact
that's
same
a good
thing.
point.
Uh, so I'll name two. I'll talk about two pitchers here that I've trained that have pitched in the highest level. One for the Yankees, and one for several teams, the Marlins, well, Yankees and Rockies, and one for Houston, Miami, and San Diego. Okay, one is just a physical freak. He's a prototypical size. He's 6'3". He was 220 at the time. He squats 500 before he trains. You know, he's just super strong. He was super tight, but he can just blow just 95-mile-an-hour cutter or something like that, which is, I don't know what a cutter is, but I heard that's amazing. So
Kind of like
it's,
a slider, but different.
I don't know what a slider is either.
Well,
So
there you go. It's
yeah,
kind of like a curveball, but different.
I train pitchers, but I stay in my lane. I make their body healthy.
Yeah.
But his balance was meh. You know, if I had him doing a single leg RDL, he can get a benefit from it. It was good enough. But if I had him, you know, doing airplanes, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, where you do like you're doing an RDL, but you rotate your hips, he would fall down. So that's his balance was average to maybe slightly above average. Yankees guy. He if you took me and put a Yankees uniform on him, we probably could wear the same uniform. That was his stature. He was about 6 foot, about 200 pounds, but he was also throwing mid 90s, and he played at the highest level. How did he make up for it? This guy could he would do this thing with the physio balls, the Swiss balls, the blow up stability balls. That if anybody's having trouble picturing it, where he would roll out with his feet on it, do a push up, and then do a knee tuck, and then stand up on the ball and start doing squats. His balance was exceptional. And when we talk about balance and neuro control, when you throw the ball, you start at the floor and the power goes up through your body and then leaves your hand. If you have bad balance is a power leak. So the first pitcher was having leaks all along the way, but he still got a good result because he started with so much. This other the guy that didn't have the size and the strength and the power, he started from the floor, but nothing leaked all the way out his hand. So nervous system control is massive. And nervous system control is focus of the body. We talked about focus of the mind.
Mm.
Nervous system control is focus of the body. You know, just reach down for something and you might lose your balance, but actually set your foot, think about it, reach and feel the way that the pressure from the floor is coming up your body. Oh, now you're developing a mind body connection. When now back to your example, that pulling the scat back, they need every clue that they can to develop that connection, and then they need to repeat that movement in the right way enough times that their brain does it automatically.
A great practical example of this was when you were first trying to train me to rehab myself through training, and I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing because Well, of course I have good balance. I did ballet and martial arts when I was young for
Yeah, but your
years.
balance sucks now.
But then you're the one that pointed out, look at yourself, man. Look at yourself. And I was shifting big time when I would squat. So a kind of standard technique to work on that is to wrap a band around your waist and you would pull me in the direction I need to go so that I would
No, I
feel
would
that
pull you
resistance
away.
or
I
but
would
pull
pull
you
you away
away
from.
so that I would fight that and then I
So
would
your body
balance.
fights me and
So
puts you in the right position. Yeah.
so it
Never pull in
feels
the way
like
they're going,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
they're just going to get
No,
worse at
that
what
that
they're
just
doing.
makes it
Yeah.
worse. So
Yeah.
you feel like you're doing it wrong. So because I had been doing it wrong for so long, I felt like all of a sudden I was favoring my bad leg. It's like, your brain is going to tell you, stop that. You're favoring your left leg. You're favoring your bad leg. No, you're not. You're just even now. So it feels wrong because
Mhm.
you've been doing it wrong for so long that wrong felt right.
Well, and now this is the green part. If you were watching, that my own words, this is what I'm trying to get through to people, especially as you're aging. Yeah, it still applies to the young athletes because we got a lot of repetitive motion. Like if you have something with your pitch that's going to ultimately hurt you over a long period of time, that is actually changing the structure of your body inside you, right? But to my example of posture, our bodies are constantly remodeling. I've already lost billions of atoms just in the last couple words I've
Mhm.
said, right? So your cellular, your the composition of your body is going to be absolutely completely different to down to every atom in about 7 years, approximately. It's the ship of Theseus thing. It's if you replaced a plank every one plank at a time from the time you took off with your ship to where you landed, is it the same ship when you got there? Technically it is, but it's all new pieces, and that's your body. So the easiest example is the one I use is posture. Gravity is always pulling on us. So if I have bad posture and I sit like this all the time, I slumped forward. If you're just listening, what's a really strong structure uh, for a horizontal structure? What's a really strong structure to fight gravity from an engineering standpoint, Heath?
The Roman aqueducts are over 2,000 years old and they can still carry water.
And what about them makes them strong?
The arch.
Arch. Yes. So if I lean forward all the time and I'm fighting gravity in that position, my spine, which is the bone structure there, is going to the osteoblasts are going to move to the top and make a circular angle, and osteoclasts are going to break up the stuff that's good for straight up and down. And ultimately, you're going to develop a skeletal arch to your back, the hunchback, right? The hunchback is there because someone had bad posture throughout their life in this world where we're always being pulled to the ground. Now everything around that has to adjust. So the muscles on the backside are going to slowly elongate until they're, and this is my sarcomeres, this is my fingers here. And so the muscle itself is elongating, but the sarcomeres are doing this. So now when you want to contract, you have very little to grip. So long and weak. The muscles in the front are going to slowly shorten the connective tissue around them. And now there's my sarcomeres. Now I barely have any connection between them. So they're short, and everybody says short and strong. No, they're short and weak. You think they're strong because they're tight and they don't want to let go,
Mm.
but they're short and weak. And the two things you don't want in your body is long and weak and short and weak. Long and strong, short and strong, those are
Giggity.
fine. Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to get in trouble for this. I don't care. I was actually giving this as an example last night when we were talking about stuff because my
But let me
daughter-in-law.
let me just finish that
Okay.
thought to close that up. The importance is this is actually a restructuring. This is not just a tightness. This is it starts as a nervous system thing, but the nervous system has a feedback loop to the things that send the building blocks to those, and as they're remodeling, as we are constantly, they develop in that. They basically get stuck in that position. So if you end up in that position, the process to get out of that position is just as long and arduous as how you got there. Again, we fast track it with exercise, but that has limits. Okay, back to your.
So I was talking about this last night because my daughter-in-law was on the wrestling team when she was in high school. And I hadn't thought about this in a while, but when I was in high school in Germany, we had a great 100 pounder because it was either 100 or 105 was the lowest weight class when I was wrestling. And a million years ago when I was in high school, there weren't a lot of female wrestlers, but those that were invariably wrestled in that bottom or second from the bottom weight class. And this guy would overpower just about everyone because most of the people in that bottom weight class were either girls or boys who hit puberty late. And so they were late bloomers, so they were freshmen or sophomores, and so they didn't have a lot of upper body strength. They didn't have a lot of muscle mass in general. And this guy was a senior midget. If you know anything about dwarfism, he looked like a silverback gorilla. He was ludicrously strong per pound in his upper body. Well, because he had such long and ludicrously strong arms, he would always tie up with someone because he could. Okay. But he was short and not very strong because he was overextending himself. He would get anyone who knew anything about what they were doing would roll him because he was off balance. Because, yes, you look at him and you think, oh my gosh, that guy is ludicrously strong. And he was for his size until he got out of balance because he wasn't. He would reach farther than he could actually work, and so he was out of balance. So when he stayed in his lane, when he stayed balanced, he was unstoppable. But when he got overly aggressive and started to try and reach beyond, well, those structures aren't built for that. Now you're out of your lane and you can't work the way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And he would inevitably get he would either dominate or just get rolled and pinned
Mm-hmm.
is how he would wrestle.
So the moral of the story, and we'll move on to Manziel since we both got kind of short time here. Uh, make sure your physical state matches the mental state you want, and your mental state matches your physical goals.
Mm.
Right. So if you're real tight and stiff and always hurting, you need to also learn how to mentally relax, not just physically relax. So taking someone who's super type A and gets really mentally stiff if things aren't working exactly in the right order and saying do yoga is going to not do anything for them. You need to stretch more. That's not going to do anything to them. All they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
doing is stretching out and lengthening a neurologically tight system.
Yeah,
Whereas,
there's where is it over there? The back mechanic that you
yeah,
got me. That's one of the anecdotes that he relates is he had someone who was not just a yoga practitioner, but an instructor with chronic back pain who came to him and he told her, look, because of your structure, because of your posture, because of your issues, you may not be able to do the things you want to do. And you're going to have to come to terms with that if you want to deal with this chronic back pain. And that was something that was really hard for her to overcome, he talked about. But eventually, once she was able to accept that, she was able to excel by focusing on the things she could do.
and then if you're always the opposite form of pain, if you're always loosey goosey all over the place, your joints are everywhere, you're hypermobile, and you keep whacking your hand on something because you don't know where it is when you swing it around, or you, the one who rips the door open every time, this personality.
If you have kids, you know that when they're young, sadly, sometimes even when they're teenagers, they run into stuff a lot.
Yeah. And then so make sure your mind is always where your body is. So make sure your mind is always where you are in physical space. If you're at a table having a conversation with them, don't be thinking about that thing you did before or that meeting you have coming up. Actually stay in your conversation with that person and do that with your body as well, or actually uh, make your training very diligent, and that will help train your mind to be very diligent and very in the moment as well. So these things, again, They're positive feedback loops or they could be negative feedback loops. Let's make them a self-reinforcing positive feedback loop, not a self uh, damaging positive feedback loop. Because remember, it's gonna just get worse if you stay where you're at. And this is actually something I really have trouble with my clients, because I the ones I've identified to be here in this space, it's uncomfortable to be out of that
Mm.
space. Uh, the rip the ground lady, she's all over the place and she's hypermobile, and her back hurts on a lot of activities where she needs some stiffness. She needs to have control of her body in that moment. She's a plop down off the box kind of person,
Mm.
but also she's a my back hurts with 30 seconds of plank kind of person. Been training for 10 years. You can barely do a 30-second plank. That's not your muscles.
Mm.
That's your mind. That's your focus. That's you actually actively stiffening yourself. But when we do that for a few days in a row, she comes in, she's like, oh, my back is so stiff. And I look at her and I'm like, good, because it wasn't stiff enough before. This
Mm.
is where the industry gets in the way, because they use words like, oh, you've got a stiff back, you need to do yoga, or oh, your hips get tight at the bottom of a squat, you need to do this or X or Y Z. I'm like, there is a time for stiffness, and there's an over flexibility and over mobility, and it goes the other way too. Those that are like, oh, the power lifter types, I can barely touch my toes but I can lift 10,000 pounds. Well, to be healthy, you need to find a little bit of looseness in your
So
life.
there's something interesting there. This was the other thought I had when you were talking earlier. Um, and I brought up this specific example, but there was another thought in my head that I'm curious because I haven't watched it yet. And so I'm curious if my outside looking in thoughts are relevant, if this is actually an interesting segue to the Johnny Manziel documentary. Um, because this is actually something I've heard Jason Whitlock talking about for a while because he lived it. All right, so let me get nerdy here. There is this old British historian named Arnold Toynbee, and he developed this in the Victorian age, turn of the century, um, one of the big thoughts in the humanities in general was the fall of empires, because you had the British Empire, you had what people were calling the American Empire because they were getting into the after the Spanish American War, they were getting into the colonization game. You had all these European powers vying for control in Africa and now Latin America and East Asia. And so there was a lot of thought about what causes the fall of empires. And Toynbee came up with this uh, rather simple theory that still works and is talked about today, which is simply called challenge and response. And he documented how when there are challenges, you will have a group of elites that will rise to that challenge and meet it. And he would offer various um, uh, historical examples, like say the Athenians when they rose to power. Even though they were a small city state, the way they answered the challenges before them made them stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his explanation for how civilizations flourish and then ultimately fall, is that they become incapable of dealing with those challenges. The Roman Empire became so fat and lazy and wealthy that they stopped meeting their challenges. They started trying to pay off their challengers, which worked for a little while, but it just made them lazier and weaker until they got to the point where finally there were people they couldn't pay off and they were destroyed. So same thing personally. I mean, we talk about that when we're talking about fitness, is you need to challenge yourself. You need to be appropriately uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a problem with, especially in recent years, with how lucrative professional athletics have become. That if you have a kid that demonstrates abnormal amounts of athletic talent, they get a free ride. So Whitlock has talked about this, that he succumbed to this because he was a big man on campus in high school. because he was a big guy, an athletic guy. He played on the offensive line. He was good enough to get a full ride. Yeah, it was a smaller school. It was a historically black college, but he got a full ride. And he's talked about Rich Gannon was his high school quarterback. And he's talked about how this is the most athletic person I have ever seen. And you and I might go, seriously? Wasn't he just like an average NFL QB? Well,
I
apparently,
actually loved Rich Gannon, so
yeah, but apparently he was ludicrously athletic. And Whitlock's own self-analysis and a little bit on Gannon is that we had such little struggle through high school and college that we didn't have to work. And so in and he's not, this is an original thought, but that's why Montana and Brady are kind of the two guys that are considered that are argued about to be the GOAT in NFL. Neither one of those guys were uber naturally athletic. Neither one of them were super highly drafted. They had to work and work hard to overcome their challenges.
Jerry Rice is the example that comes to mind for me.
Really.
Yeah, 4'6" something, 40. He was at
Oh, I
Chattanooga
didn't know
State
that.
because he didn't have the talent, and he's probably the greatest wide receiver to ever played. So, but he was known for working more than everybody else.
And so Whitlock has gotten personal and we've talked about this that um so he hurt his knee bad like his junior year and gotten an argument with his coaches about it and about the rehabilitation of it and said, screw it, I'm not coming back. And so he skipped his senior year. So he's talked about, I probably wouldn't have been drafted, but I'll never know because I gave up on it because I didn't have to. I had lived, even though, and this gets personal for him too, of even though he had come from a very hard background. So he came from the ghetto of Indianapolis. His parents were divorced. His dad ran a small business that he had to help with. And so he knew the value of hard work growing up, but yet he was also pampered from basically the time he was freshman when it was seen, oh, this guy's a good athlete. This guy's big. This guy could play at the next level. And so it was this kind of uh counterpoint of, yeah, he had to work in his family growing up and his dad taught him the value of hard work, but within his sphere he was pampered.
I'll give you a good example that someone we poo poo on a lot is LeBron James. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking
his
that.
dad left when he was young, but he ended up living with his coach from junior high on because his coach saw that he was going to ultimately be a 6'8" badass. And he had a pampered life from then on because we were seeing stories of him when he was a sophomore in high school. It's like
Yeah, because he was that
his
dominating.
all the people that were giving his mom credit for cars and stuff because they knew he would end up in the NBA. It starts early and it turns out fine for some people. LeBron's a good example. He's got a family. He's still with his baby mama. He's still supporting everybody. And actually, some of his wokeness is starting to crack because of some conflicting things that are happening right now with jabs and people he loves. And so, but as far as raising a family and we can talk about his politics again, just like Sam Harris set his politics aside. He's one of the greatest basketball players ever, even though he gets to take 5 steps every time he dunks. But he still could be, he would still be at the top if he didn't get to do that too. And he's actually being a good family man to his family. So we've got this good example that we could go by. And this is actually what we should be propping up to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
not the other stuff around him. We should be propping
Right.
this part up
The
to him.
the other stuff, as we said before, when he says some really brain dead things, you look at him and from you and I perspective, there's someone who's never been punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would he? Since he was a sophomore in high school, he was the big man on campus.
Yeah. And he probably had an entourage and everything around him that who
Yeah.
was somebody's going to jail. Oh, this kid that did the 150 miles an hour, the guy, the Raiders receiver. He was a
Yeah, yeah,
rookie.
yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to jail and he's going to get this much time, but he still gets his contract was fully guaranteed. So
Bully.
fully guaranteed. So he still is he's going to be like I think after everything that was going to come out of it from fees and contract issues and stuff, it was still going to be like 6 million. This guy's going to be in prison, and there's going to be people in prison that are going to protect him because they want to be part of his crew when he gets out of prison and they get out of prison. So yeah, it's going to suck compared to being an NFL star and living in real life, but it's not the worst prison experience you could have.
But it's not a real challenge, is it?
Yeah,
Unless you
yeah.
make it one. So LeBron, to his credit, he didn't have those kind of challenges growing up, except on the court. To his credit, compared to other people who have been in his position and have
Well, I
been
will say
draft busts.
we'll have to say from junior high on because we don't know how his life
Hmm.
was before that.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Because he could
fair.
have had an abusive
But but
boyfriend or
still, to
whatever.
his credit, there have been other people who have been in his position who have been, if not complete busts. Look at like Carmelo and Allen Iverson, who came a few years before him. They were in the same boat of ludicrous amounts of talent, drafted right out of high school. And while they weren't busts, they didn't live up to their full, what was seen as their full potential. And to a certain degree, I think it goes back to that challenge and response. How do you respond to those challenges in front of you?
Mm-hmm. And this is actually one area where I'll protect LeBron a little bit, not protect, but vouch for him a little bit. Everybody, the big beef on him with the whole GOAT conversation is he needed a team around him. Like that's actually, you brought up Iverson and Melo. They always wanted to be the show. Iverson always
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be the show. Melo always wanted to be the show. They put themselves in situations where you couldn't build a team around them. I actually give Braun credit for going and finding a team around. That
Yeah,
gives him
Dwayne Wade
credit.
was a big star when he
Yeah,
went to Miami. Yeah.
yeah. That get and Bosch, the big three, Dwayne Wade, Bosch, and James. Give him credit for being a leader to put a team around him. Yeah, you could talk about the individual talent as far as GOAT. Maybe Jordan's still better. I still think so too. And you can't even compare because it's a different play style.
I'm a
So
racist, so I say Larry Legend.
Larry Bird is in the conversation, but I still would probably shift to MJ. But the, I don't think you can compare them. They're different positions, personally. But
Yeah.
it's give him credit for putting teams around him. Brady did the same thing. Brady took pay cuts so he could have a team around
He
him.
was never the top. He was never the top paid quarterback, let alone, well, I guess nowadays top paid player
He
is
took
top
a
paid
couple
quarterback,
paychecks
but
near the end of his career, but
yeah, yeah.
uh, Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan used to constantly restructure to keep talent around him. And it was always that sixth or seventh person that would come in that was the difference between a championship or not. In
Nowitzki,
'99, it was Mario Ellie.
yeah.
In 2003, it was Robert Ory, right? It was all of these role players that they could afford because they were a little bit higher priced than the other role players on the market.
Hmm.
Steve Kerr is another example. When he came in game 6 against the Pistons and hit 5 threes in a row to take it to 7, that, I mean, you don't have that without Steve Kerr. Maybe Stephen Curry could do that now, but nobody else at that time could have done that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was fun to watch. Yeah.
So so I guess it does segue us to Manziel because now you have an example of a lot of similar things and how it all went wrong, right? So I do strongly, even though we're going to talk about it, there might be a few spoilers. I think it's still worth watching because, well, how many spoilers can you have when you watched it in real time, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
We watched Johnny Manziel happen, but he went to a super strict high school that had that military
Hmm.
style football program and everything.
Where did he go? I didn't know that.
Kerrville, something in Kerrville. I can't remember the
Okay.
exact school name, but
Is it a private school? Or is it just one of these, super hardcore, traditions like here at Allen,
yeah, it's a
Allen
hardcore
High School?
tradition thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he was part of that program, and he excelled as a football player. Right, he's Johnny Football. So he wanted to go to UT, but they didn't recruit him, and he ended up going to A&M because they gave him a full ride and everything. He's actually a little bit undersized. He's not prototypical size for a quarterback.
Isn't
What
he
is he?
like 5'10"? He's in like Drew Brees size.
Yeah, 5'10", 5'11", somewhere around there. So he goes to A&M, and those that know his actual history, as a freshman, wins the Heisman Trophy, and they kind of go through
Yeah.
that process. And this is where it gets to the what did I send you? What did I send you as far as my thoughts?
It's a good question.
Let me look that real quick. But this is
So,
where it gets to the okay, so that show got me thinking. It got me in a thinking space. It's the old "Would you kill the baby Hitler"
mm,
question if you could time travel. And I can think of times I failed. Blah 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 blah. The
yeah,
answer is
that's what got me curious is wait, how did this come about from the Johnny Manziel documentary?
well because you see where it all went wrong, and you start
Mm,
questioning. You start questioning. Well, could he, if he had a better coach, could he have pulled him in the right direction? If he had had better friends around him, could he have gone in the right direction? Or if the system was different, could he have
yeah.
gone in the right direction? And uh, I want to start with the coaches because I, I still want to kind of put a little bit on them, but I don't want to completely put it on them. So Sumlin was his head coach. Cliff Kingsbury was his offensive coordinator, and Kingsbury kind of had been maybe known to party a little bit too in his time. And actually, his interviews in this where he kind of thought it was a little bit funny at times, but he uh, he was his offensive coordinator, and either of those guys could have helped right the ship at some point, right? But they didn't. And how many times could you have suspended him for a game as a coach or done this or done that? And this is where I don't want to come too hard on the coaches because how many administrators and alumni said no? This guy wins games, this guy sells jerseys, this guy does all of these other things.
But that is still on you to a degree because I've referenced this before. I believe it was a Sports Illustrated
You
like
could have spoke
in-depth.
out. You could have
Yeah.
spoke out,
I,
yeah.
I I believe it was a Sports Illustrated really in-depth article about the New England Patriots shortly before Brady left. And it was talking about the Patriot system, the Patriot way, and why they work. And the article is basically making the case that so this was, shortly before the divorce between Brady and Belichick, and the argument had been growing for a little while of is it Belichick or is it Brady? And this guy was making the case that it's both,
Mm-hmm.
that you couldn't have one without the other.
I think
And
that's obvious that it was
yeah,
because the Patriots are still good. They're just not winning championships. And Brady was still he still won a championship and he was still good, but he wasn't what he was with the Patriots.
yeah, but those other couple of years in Tampa were kind of so there's this one incident in
Well, age
particular that
helps with that, by the
yeah,
way.
that
We're
really
we're we're
jumps
the
out at
same age
me.
as Brady, and that
Yeah.
makes me feel bad.
That I remember it because the author talked to Randy Moss, and Moss was relating a story of when his first team meeting with in once he had gotten to the Patriots. And I can't remember the game, but the year before they had lost in the playoffs, I think in the divisional round. And so that was their first team film session, was looking at that game. And Belichick is just ripping into Brady of and Moss was saying, I don't know if this was just the way it was, where Belichick was trying to make a point of no one is safe here because kept going through plays where Brady had messed up. And he said, there were two thoughts in my head, the two things that made me go, oh, this place is different is one, that the head coach is ripping into the quarterback, not just the quarterback, but arguably the quarterback of the league, let alone the leader of your team. And Brady took it. He said, yes, sir. He said, yes, sir, no excuse. Yes, sir, I messed that up because. Yes, sir, I did this when I should have done that. And that made an impact on Moss. And if you'll remember, I think it was that year that they broke the touchdown pass record. Brady and Moss did.
Yeah, I think Brady had like 55 that year.
Yeah, it was some
Some
ludicrous
yeah.
number. And so I think Brady broke the individual record of touchdown passes, and then they broke a record of tandem quarterback to receiver touchdown passes. So it was some crazy number,
It was those
and
flat balls.
it get it wet? No, no, Gaby. Uh, but it started there. It started with Brady being man enough, being self-critical enough, humble enough, and driven enough to succeed. That even though Belichick was ripping into him, there was no prima donna there in that meeting. It was yes, sir, no, sir, I'll do better, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely an element of there is an element that's on you of are you going to work with the system? Are you going to work with the coach in this instance to say, here's where I can do better and set the tone for everyone else in the room?
So that was the coaches, and then there's the friends, and he had his buddy that is interviewed in this, and this is the, I was talking to some other people that had watched it, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe he ditched his friend later in life." But his friend was the freaking enabler.
Mm,
His friend stuck with him, but he also created the scheme that allowed him to make the money from all the things he was doing. Because basically, in essence, and it was a little more complicated than this, and they go through how complicated it is, but in essence, the friend was the one getting paid, and then he was giving cash to Manziel. So there was no paper trail directly to
hmm
Manziel from all of these things. So if Manziel would, sign 20 footballs for $1 million, the friend got paid the $1 million, gave 80% of it in cash to Manziel. So it was a complicated system that they had devised together. So his friend was the enabler in all of this. And they were partying hard. They were definitely partying hard. I went out as an old man on Saturday, and it took me till halfway through Monday to semi recover. But they were doing probably twice that. Of course, cocaine helps, and I don't do cocaine, but uh, maybe better drug testing would have been. Well, of course, he talks about how he cheated on drug tests too. So maybe drug tests weren't the answer unless you actually watched him piss. But uh,
yeah.
so the friend was the enabler. Parents, I give the parents a pass here because they tried to do everything for him and then just gave up when he was in college. And everybody's like, a lot of the documentary and people that I've talked to, parents that I've talked to, because parents unfortunately think they have more sway than they do over their kids. But realistically, after about 5 or 6 years old, it's actually more about peers and mentors than it is about you. So your best job as a parent after that point is to get them with the right people.
Mm.
And uh,
And having been around when kids are self-destructing and seeing the challenge of, I love my kids and I want to help them, but is the best thing to help them right now to be to say, okay, you're on your own. I've done my best, but you're on your own because at some point you're going to have to hit rock bottom and come back, or you're going to keep perpetuating the cycle. So I have a really hard time blaming parents
mhm.
um in a situation like this, or even not as bad as this, but similar.
Yeah, well, and it's that point where it's like it's a dad raising a boy. You want them to do dangerous things, but you kind of set up the situation where that they don't die from it, but they get hurt enough to learn from it.
Mm,
And so I think the parents actually did that with again, they put him in the really hardcore football program that was discipline oriented. So during a time of their life where they had direct control, they did the right thing. They put him in the best schools. They gave him every opportunity. But then when he went off to school, that there's only so much you can do at that
mm,
point. You're getting everything 3 days after it happened, and maybe even more so at that time. You're not. Everything is reactionary at that point as a parent. Once your kid leaves your house, and you can support them, or you can say, "I don't approve of this. Come back to me when you've learned your lesson," or any number of those different things. And that's kind of where they ended up. Come back to me when you learned your lesson, and which is the end of the movie. It's the end of the documentary is kind of where it ended up. It's not a spoiler there because it's the mediocre kind of semi sort of happy ending that's not really a happy ending, right? So I don't blame the parents. And then the last one is the system. Was the system set up to create this? And I think in some ways, yes. So I actually, this is a debate I have all the time with my athletes because course, the players are always going to side with the players, right? So, should college athletes be paid? The answer is, from my perspective, they already are, because they have a scholarship to do what they do.
Ask anyone with a bunch of college debt that question, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we have
yeah.
plenty of college debt here. We actually fully paid off my wife's. She's done. After
Huzzah!
10 years of being a doctor, we've paid it off. So that tells you, exactly how it goes. If you're not a doctor, it takes longer than that. So yes, they are getting paid by the school to play football in the scholarship. Now, this is where we should not pay anything crowd gets mad at me. Again, Sam ends up somewhere in the middle, so everybody's mad at Sam. Your likeness and what you do on your own time, you should be
That's
able to
you,
get
man.
paid for what you
Yeah.
do. And the fact that he has to do autograph sessions and sign jerseys and
Mm-hmm.
footballs and everything for the school, but he can't do that on his own, that's a problem. You should be able to do what you should be able to get on Instagram and be an influencer and get paid whatever percentage of traffic you get paid. We had a couple guys. Remember when I was managing that Taco Bell when we were at Oklahoma State?
Mm-hmm.
We had two guys that were basically fourth string practice squatters that wanted a job. And so we hired them, and they played football at Oklahoma State. And again, in this position, and they had very small scholarships. It was like a couple $100 scholarships to be where
Mm-hmm.
they were. So they wanted a job to make extra money. The school found out about it, and they had to pay us back every bit of their wages, and we had to fire them
Holy
because
crap!
because you weren't allowed to make money outside of the school because they had a scholarship to play football. NCAA rules. But yet their scholarship was just a couple $100 on their several $1,000 tuition, on their room and board. And we've all eaten at Bennett Hall, where you had to use 8 swipes on your meal card to get the steak and the crab legs that the athletes got, right? So what you do on your own time, as long as it doesn't affect your play, you should be able to profit from if you can. And that's where my opinion is. No, we don't pay you to play.
Mm-hmm.
But if your name gets national attention and you can sell it, do it. If you're a great influencer online, do it.
Yeah, but it's all about the amateur athlete. But of course it is, because there's a buttload of money being made in this system that has nothing to do with the athlete. So this is where nobody likes what we have to say, because we fall in the middle, because you're both wrong and you're both right and you're both varying degrees of awful. Does anyone remember this? This happened a long time. I mean, this happened over 10 years ago. April 14th, 2011 is what this article is from. Do you even remember this? There's this huge financial scandal
Mm-hmm.
of the goodie bags that were being handed out, the the various trips and money that was being handed out to politicians and to donors to keep this cash cow of the Fiesta Bowl, one of the big four, going, so that the people who were putting it on would benefit from this once a year thing, right? Benefit tremendously.
What I want to know is
Um,
that $1,200 per player at the strip club, or is that just 1,200 total? Because that makes a difference. That really does make a difference.
yep. $1,200 spent to visit a strip club is to
Because
cover up illicit
$1,200 for 30
activity.
players at a strip club is like just tipping at the stage.
I
But
I I'm
$1,200 per
assuming
player is VIP
uh
room and popping bottles.
I'm assuming that was like to take a couple of VIPs to the strip clubs and wine and dine them, is what I'm guessing. Because a lot of this was done to get um politicians in Arizona to keep giving them the sweetheart deals to keep running the Fiesta Bowl.
Politicians take money to do something? No.
Mhm. uh including a scheme to reimburse improper campaign donations, unauthorized and excessive compensation, non-business inappropriate expenditures. And so this is the money laundering scheme that is government and government private collusion
You mean
and
fascism?
exactly is that uh it's basically legal money laundering of, yeah, we did this thing for you and this was a business expense, so let us compensate you. Here's $100 for your visit to McDonald's.
Yeah, this is an overt example, but there are so many subvert examples that
Mhm.
I almost don't know where I could stand on them, because if you're a politician, and okay, so I'm going to use Houston as example. If I'm the mayor of Houston, I want Houston to thrive, right?
Mhm.
And the more I do to do that, the more I'm doing for my people. That's my job as a politician. Well, if the NCAA Final Four is played in Houston, the tax revenue goes through the roof because
Mhm.
you've got tens of thousands of people coming into the town, getting hotel rooms, going to restaurants because they're not at home, buying souvenirs, buying tickets to the game, which is also taxed. So all of these things benefit my community, but yet they're also corporate too. So I'm doing whatever I can to get the Final Four played here, and it's like we've done it like 4 times in the last 10 years here in Houston, something like that. But we also have badass stadiums and like
This ties
Reliant.
into
But
the Manziel uh documentary as well, because part of that, you want to do right by your city and your people and all that. It's easy to con yourself into the con and rationalize what you're doing, and you just so happen to be getting a little bit of a kickback, whether legal or illegal. It just so happens that, you're getting your back scratched as well. It's easy to, if you're Manziel and someone like that, it's easy to talk yourself into, well, yeah, but these people are profiting off of my work and off of my likeness and all these things before damage and likeness stuff had gone to Manziel. So, it's only right that I get compensated. I can see how he could easily, and his friends could easily talk him into and rationalize these things with each little step, and you don't have the mindfulness to look at where you are and say, well, wait a minute, but big picture here, there's a problem here. Big picture, there's this downside, but you're not looking at the downside. You're only looking at the rationalization of this little thing right here.
mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I need to think about my grocery list. I need to think about my kids' pickup times because, okay, well, yeah, but that's, you know, you're only looking at the now. You're not looking at the big picture of, yeah, that's a thing you got to worry about. But you also have to worry about this thing that's right in front of you here, because otherwise you're going to slip on the box and crack your head.
Let's see. I'm looking up one thing. What age was he when he was drafted?
He went early. I
Well,
can't
but
remember
he yeah
how early.
he went after his sophomore year, so that would have made him. He was born in '92. He was drafted in 2014. So that would have made him 22.
Okay.
I thought it would be younger because he went out his sophomore year, but I guess he might have
Did
been
did he
he might
spend
have been
time
one of those
redshirt
kids
or
that started
community
that
college?
no, he didn't spend any of that.
Okay.
Uh, but he might have been one of those kids that started kindergarten at 6 or something.
Okay.
But one of the things I was thinking is one of my clients brought up that we were talking about this. He said, remember Reggie Bush when he got caught because he had signed some stuff and made money off of it? He lost his Heisman Trophy. Now that all this is coming out, why hasn't Manziel lost his Heisman Trophy? But then I went deeper into that. I'm like, when he was in college, he was partying with Drake, doing all these things, popping bottles everywhere. He was under 21 when he was doing all this. Where are the providing a minor with alcohol and all of these other things that could have been charged to these famous people taking pictures with him at the time doing it? We have evidence. We have enough evidence.
because we have because we have a two-tier justice system, justice for thee and not
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
me.
no, everybody talks about the Hunter Bidens and stuff in the world, but I saw a meme one time and it had remember when Snoop Dogg used to do the cooking shows with
Hmm.
what's her name?
Martha Stewart,
Martha Stewart. Yeah, and
because
Martha
she's
Stewart
she's
ended up going
OG
to
now because
jail.
she's been
Yeah.
to jail. Yeah.
Well, no, but before that, they were doing the cooking shows
Oh,
before that.
really? I
But
thought that's when they started to get
yeah,
together.
but then the picture would come out and it'd say only one of these people is a criminal, you know, whatever CRT phrase you want to go with it, And I'm like, yeah, that's because Snoop Dogg can sit there and do drugs on stage while a cop is sitting right next to him and basically making sure nobody jumps on stage. It is a two-tiered system. She had a white collar crime to make an example of that don't skip on your taxes, where he is doing illicit stuff right next to a cop, but it doesn't affect anybody
Well,
that is
you,
politically
you want
motivated.
to get, yeah, you want to get real deep. Okay, so Martha Stewart goes to jail for insider trading. What does Nancy Pelosi's husband do? He's
Apparently
ba
doesn't talk to her about trading because then it would be insider trading.
even though he's a banker.
Yeah, he does better than Warren Buffett in investments. That tells you everything you need to know. Okay, so
Mhm.
so my statement to you was thinking about Hitler, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Manziel and Hitler. How do we connect these two? Maybe that should be. Can I make that as the title?
Sure.
Is Manziel
Connecting
Hitler or
Manziel and
something?
Hitler.
Connecting Manziel and Hitler. Would
So
that get us
connecting
banned?
Manziel and Hitler.
Yeah, or something like
Probably.
that.
Well,
Yeah,
let's see.
we'll see what we do here. But if that's not the title, it's because I chickened out. But so I'll go ahead and go on the record and say that.
Dash dash. That German guy.
Yeah. So the thought experiment in psychology and neuroscience and everything is, if we all know the trolley problem, but one of the ones that is thrown out there is, if you can go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler? Right.
Hmm.
And my answer is no. I would find the point in his life that caused him from being a good thing to a bad thing. Because being a psychopath isn't good or bad, right?
Mm.
Being a psychopath is a state of mind that allows good or bad to happen. And realistically, if you really think about what he became, if you take out all the genocide and he was still able to come to power, he could have been the anti-Stalin. If you really break down who he was, because he was the anti-communist of his time that just happened to hate Jews at the same time and happened to kind of be a little Machiavellian and ends justify the means in a lot of ways. If he had been steered in just the right way to be a good leader, he would have still been anti-communist, and Stalin was not a good person. And he was doing a lot of bad things at the time as well, but he was doing less bad things than Hitler was. So we sided with
Hmm.
Stalin during World War II. If it was the other way around, we never would have had the Cold War. We never would have had a lot of things, right? So it isn't the answer of would I have killed baby Hitler, because we don't know what would have happened after that. Someone worse could have gotten in that place.
Hmm.
We don't know that. But where could you have steered him in the right direction? That's the question. So I took that same mindset to Manziel. At what point do you think we could have helped him on the right track? And I've got my answer, but I want to have your answer first because you haven't had as long to think about it. So I want a reactionary answer. As we've gone a little bit through the history, he had the militaristic
Hmm.
style coaching, he had the good parents, then he went to school, then he had the friend influences, he had the coaches that didn't do anything, and then he ended up in the pros. He got drafted in 2014. Just kind of go through his whole career. He had Drake and all these people in his ear popping bottles, Floyd
So
Mayweather.
originally, uh, when he was getting drafted, there was and reportedly this is like the biggest fight Stephen Jones has ever had with his dad, Jerry Jones, because Jerry wanted to draft Manziel. And Stephen said, no, 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 no. And I sent a couple of messages to some friends that I am changing my allegiance to the Washington Redskins if they draft Manziel, because I saw this train wreck coming. My thought at the time was the only way he's going to flourish as a pro QB is either with Belichick in New England and that system, or uh, New Orleans, because Peyton is such a great coach's coach, such a great QB whisperer, and he has a long history of working with an undersized QB who's also very athletic.
Who has Russell Wilson now, by the way.
Hmm. So that was my thought at the time. Um, listening to you talk about the history before the NFL, though, my thought now is convince him, go back in time and convince him not to go to A&M, but to go to Michigan or someone like Jim Harbaugh.
Did he? But he didn't have offers from them. That's the thing.
Right,
The
exactly.
only full ride offer he had was A&M.
So changing his mindset, how do you change his mindset to look at the big picture? Because the big picture would have been go somewhere where you can have a better chance of growing and flourishing and work your way into a full ride. Like if you're as good as you think you are, you will work your way into a full ride. And someone like Jim Harbaugh, who's not just a good coach, but is also a good person and who looks at more than just the bottom line. I mean, he doesn't, Jim Harbaugh does not have to have stayed at Michigan as long as he did, but he's a family guy and he likes that environment for his family. And he's an alumni and he likes that university. He loves that university. He wants to stay there. He desperately wants to make Michigan what it once was, to bring national championships to Michigan. To me, that says something more about him as a person than as a coach. And that's what someone like Manziel needs, is someone who can also be that person to help mentor you, that can help mentor you, the person, not just you, the athlete.
Okay, so this is where I disagree with you. I thought you were going to go with the draft, and that's where I was going. But I think that was the compromise he did make going to A&M. Because look, think of the school A&M. It's all about the core. It's all about
Yeah,
the Southern values. It's all about the discipline. And his coach Kevin Sumlin, remember, just came off of being the head coach of Case Keenum, who was the biggest success to come out of UH as far as quarterbacks has ever had, right? Which
true, yeah.
Texans backup quarterback right now, which he's there to be a backup coach as well, if anybody's paying attention to the NFL. But so I think that was the mindset that was going to that with him and his family and his parents. But tell a 19-year-old boy to not take a pile of cash that's just given his way
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
as well as probably, a threesome every night for 2 years, and fill in the blank XYZ. You're getting people buying you liquor because you can't buy it for yourself, and you're still going out and playing at this high level with no repercussions because you're made of rubber and magic, right? Tell that kid to stop doing what he's doing, and all you're going to get is a kid that doesn't comply. My point is the draft. The worst thing that happened to him was getting drafted by the Browns, and not only that, them moving up to draft him.
Mm.
Because yeah, all that hype, everything, the best thing that could have happened to him was to walk out of day one with nothing.
Mm.
That would have been the best thing that could have happened to him. And if he, and at that point, he could have been humbled by the draft a little bit, or he could have gotten high. I don't know. That's still not even the point. But then the other part of it is whoever drafts him comes in and says, and actually is honest with him. Look, we're taking a chance with you. We're taking a chance with you. I want you to play like you did at A&M. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care a whole lot about your personal life. Just don't do anything illegal, please, and show up to practice. That would have been the best thing that happened to him. That would have been a good start. But what he got was, we moved up to get you. You're the star of the show. You can do no wrong. And the team that did it is the team that's been through what, 25 quarterbacks in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And Manziel was one of the longest lasting one of them.
That was one of the longest lasting. That says something.
Yeah. So I mean, so you understanding addiction is sometimes you get away with it and you're still successful. But then once success leaves, it becomes the crutch you go back to, right? And I think that's the point he hit with Cleveland is he got onto a bad team that's historically bad, that doesn't handle their players very well, doesn't give the mentorship they need. You don't even have a head coach for more than a year in Cleveland. Name a head coach that's lasted more than 1 year in Cleveland. I can't. I can't even hardly name a head coach of Cleveland. But that's the point that I think if I was to find it, knowing the history and go back in time, is I would try to get in his ear at that point. If I could be his coach at that point, even his strength coach at that point, maybe I could have made a difference. Because you can even take the angle of, hey, you love this life, you don't want it to end, you have to be successful to keep this going. You're here
Mhm.
because of your successes as a freshman and sophomore. So it only gets harder the farther you go up. So I'm not asking you to be Peyton Manning and do all of these things that he does. I'm asking you just kick your level up a notch and keep this whole thing going. And that could have changed everything.
Mhm. I'm just looking at the draft order of that year, and the Saints picked 2 picks before that, and they took Brandon Cooks. And so that could have been a big change for him if not only if he'd gone to Sean Payton, but then at pick number 20 instead of in the top 10, and Payton could say, look, you dropped all the way to number 20 for a reason. Now, do you want to be successful or not? So you would add that to the the authority that Sean Payton already has is then you add on to that a something like an Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay picking him way down late. But to your point, I hadn't thought of that. But then Cleveland paying the price to jump back into the first round to get him. That's just going to fuel his ego, which was already the big problem.
Mm-hmm. Well,
All right.
and he's in a situation where he didn't have to compete
Mm-hmm.
because Cleveland drafting you as a quarterback means you're starting that year. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. You could be drafted in the 7th round as a Cleveland quarterback, and you're playing that year.
Interestingly, the next 2 QBs picked were the very last pick in the first round was Teddy Bridgewater to the Vikings. And then at the top of the second round, Derek Carr to the Raiders.
Oof, those are two that have had respectable careers.
Yeah,
Derek Carr might.
Bridgewater probably would have had a comeback were it not for that pretty horrific leg break.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Derek Carr, we might see a resurgence in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a whole lot as far as receiving threats, but they do have good head coaching, and yeah, I think he got a raw deal in Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just being weird because Devontae Adams was pretty vocal about what was going on, and he wanted to leave before the season ended last year because of that. But when a team makes the decision that they want a new QB, they just go dumb until they get the one they want,
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't even know what they want when they get it. So
Yep. All right. Well, did you have any other thoughts on that, or are we done
nope, I
now?
think we've gone long enough. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
good watch. Go ahead and watch it. I recommend it. Netflix. If you've got it, Johnny Manziel, good hour and a half of your time. To the first topic, more in our wheelhouse and more to come because I'll be learning more over the next several years. I get to dissect brains next semester. I learned that
lovely.
today. Yes, be awesome. But
Yes.
some of us have more fun with things than others. Uh, but yeah, we'll yeah, just pay attention to your mental state if you're hurting physically. Pay attention to your physical state if you are having mental issues. They
Mm-hmm.
play back and forth, and be a healthier person.
Yeah. And as you say that, a thought occurs to me. Not that focusing on the small isn't necessary. So you're suffering, whether it's mental or physical pain, what is it? Okay, how can I alleviate it? Just don't stop there. There also needs to be all right, now let me zoom out and see what's actually causing that. Don't get sucked in to a small little bubble.
Yeah, and but I just really, when you're in tune, you see the little things. that keep adding up. And
Hmm.
again, you can hit the gym, you can fast track some progress, but at the same time, if for that hour you spend in the gym, if you're spending 23 hours doing the opposite of that progress, well, now you've got another, you're not,
Hmm.
you're basically running in sand is what you're doing.
Yep. All right. Well, we will see y'all next time for some good old fashioned Wheel of Time fun.
Yeah, I got to catch up on my reading here.
Yep. We'll see y'all then.